zone. That Israel is also is not just our family, but Israel is a manifestation of what it means to be a Jew. And I think what's so troubling about the current conflict is that what it means to be a Jew and the ethical and the religious and the spiritual connotations of that seems to be up for grabs. And I think that we as a Jewish community, wherever we are, have a responsibility and an individual responsibility to choose our values and to speak up for our values, our collective values, our best values, and support each other together.
There's something I'm pretty uncomfortable with that we're talking about now, and I think it's just the words. Several times people have said being critical of Israel, and I want to go back to what Steve said, and that is, I'm not going to be critical of Israel as a land or a country where Jews are probably safer than any other country in the world, because Hitler can come back. He's starting to come back in this country. So I don't have a problem with being critical of Netanyahu or the government or some of the laws they passed, but I have a lot of problem with just using the word Israel when we say we want to be critical of them.
I think I think, Alan, that's an excellent point, because sometimes we don't use language so carefully. And we are asked, you know, in America, maybe just on these during these times of being online and having things so short, and a video on Instagram can be a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and it's hard to encapsulate everything that we need to say about our rights and responsibilities when it comes to the state of Israel in a brief amount of time. And I think we really have, one of the things that we have to do as people who may be asked questions about our connections to Israel is to say, let me give you half an hour. No, I'm serious, because we can't answer questions facilely and easily. You know, is your shoe untied? Yes or no? Do you approve of Israel? Let me give you half an hour and let me explain things to you. Let me explain how I see things. Not let me explain to you, but let me explain how I see things. And then maybe we can have a dialogue about that, but give me half an hour. Give me time, or let me offer you time to paint a fuller picture. For people who are confident in their knowledge about Israel, that's great. And for people who may be less than confident, maybe that's the point of Israel education, is to make them more confident to do that.
I just want to suggest us from now on, everyone that talks first says their name for Trisha and for everyone else to know who's speaking.
Thank you.
Mark, so I have a question for the two of you, and Az. How do you deal with the problems that Jewish students are facing on campus from the people on the left? And I mean, it's interesting how what's happening in Israel is impacting negatively Jewish students on campuses in a bad way. And obviously there's no justification for what they're experiencing. How do you deal with that? Because, you know, Mass is probably one of them. And how are we dealing with that nationwide to protect the Jewish students on campus at the same time that, you know, the other students are reacting to Netanyahu's policies and other policies towards Palestinians?
Yeah. Okay, so I work with Jewish students here in UW. And do you have half an hour? No, but I'll try to make it short. I think it's very complicated. I think that sometimes we're talking about colleges as it's one thing, and it's not. We have the US has, I don't know, hundreds of different colleges with a lot of Jewish students. And every college has specific challenges and specific advantages and, you know, like different aspects to it. There is more challenging, more violent places.
Madison is not one of them.
I don't think that Madison is one of them. I worked with Yarmulke with Kippah for a year and a half here. I had close to zero, maybe half, you know, I don't know, halfway of something that happened. And I went to talk to SJPs, Student Justice for Palestine. They didn't want to talk to me, but I tried very nicely. I think it's important. I think that, unfortunately, and I said that as Israeli, most of the criticism in colleges in US against Israel, it's not a productive criticism. It's not criticism against Netanyahu or the far right. It's mostly criticism against the idea of the state of Israel, the idea of Jewish people with political power. And it's again, I don't have time for examples, but it's getting to a very weird extreme point, which like you ask someone, what do you think about Syria and Assad? And they can tell you, and it's true story, this is just a Western propaganda. Assad is actually France. True.
Oh my God.
You know, very weird situation. And I think I say unfortunately twice. Once, because I think it's just a shame. But second, because I think Israel deserved to fix a lot of things. And productive criticism is important things to do. On the other hand, I think that there is a lot of Jewish students. There is a lot of Jewish students who are struggling, but there is a lot of Jewish students who just want to have good time, want to be proud of who they are, with, of course, open space to share thoughts and even criticism. It is what I try to do here. I just had like 2 sessions just today. Every week I have around 5 with different groups of students. And we have open conversations, some of them nice, funny, tough. But I think this is now the most important part. Yeah, I'm not sure it was like a very clear answer.
You guys have to go back to Israel.
But,
Can you stay long?
I just want to say before, like, we do have some like planned questions, but I want first to hear from you. Like, we had a tough week, tough couple of weeks. What's your thoughts? What do you want to share? Yeah, please, Jerry.
Maybe a little hard. Thanks. Jerry Sternberg. I think that the pushback by the Israeli people to these, to what I consider undemocratic moves by Netanyahu's coalition are extremely important. And I'm very, very proud of them. And I admire the resilience and the consistency of the protests and the numbers, particularly this last weekend. And I think it cannot let up until he drops these anti-democratic supposed reforms of the judiciary. Because I think the people in the country of many political stripes, but mostly, of course, the center and the left, feel that this is truly, truly anti-democratic and may change the nature of the country of Israel. I think the reasons that he's doing it, namely in support of the settlers and the ultra-Orthodox, do not, even though it's close in terms of the numbers, do not necessarily reflect the majority of the country, because in many respects, the country is secular. So you have to have a balance, and he is not representing a balance. Now, as far as the American Jewry support of this opposition, I think it's very important. I do kind of agree with the first points that we looked at, that we don't have a vote in the Knesset, that we are not citizens of Israel, and consequently we have a different perspective. It's not as quite as significant as the the individual citizens who are protesting. But I think it's very important that we support the protesters.
Let me go to a question that you haven't asked yet, but I want to have them address. The decision that Netanyahu is making to defer rather than abandon, is that indeed going to be helpful to the situation with all these people, Jerry, that you're talking about?
So, and feel free to say, like, no shame, but like someone here feels like you need some information to understand what Jerry just said. Like, you all feel like updated about the current situation.
There may be, but I think that maybe people don't even know. It's like the child who doesn't know enough to ask quite yet. Some of us that sometimes we may not know the right questions.
So need to like stop us anytime for like I didn't understand what you just said, or what is that term you just used. Okay, First of all, it's very interesting what you say. A lot of our friends and a lot of people from our family were actually part of the protest in different locations in Israel. I have actually a good friend that was one of the organizers of the students' protest in Jerusalem. So we heard a lot of their thoughts and feelings. We also have a lot of people in our families that are actually on the other side. And it creates a lot of, I don't like it to say like sides, because we're all families and we're all friends, but in Israel nowadays, it creates a lot of tension. It's not like here in Madison, where I feel like it's a lot of the time like
Well, everything is peaceful here. In Wisconsin, everything is peaceful.
But I feel like a lot of the time, of course, we have like stuff like that over here, but I feel like here it's more common to have like communities who have the same political view and not necessarily intertwine a lot, which is as a lot of advantages and disadvantages in both options, of course. But I feel like in Israel, we can all understand a little bit more how the situation happens, because we know the feelings of the people who voted for this coalition. From one hand, we also know exactly how many people in Israel feel. And I feel like it wasn't just about the judicial reform itself. It was a lot also about looking at the characteristics of Israel and what is our dream and our vision for this country, and what other people's dream. And I feel like maybe some people felt like because of the demographic process that's going on in Israel, and different groups have different amount of kids, and that's okay. We don't have to escape saying that. Some people felt like, okay, it's not just this reform, but what else can be in the way if we won't stop it now? But from the other hand, some people from the other side felt like it's not about the laws that we suggest, it's about who we are, which is kind of like the other side of what I just said. So that's why the tension was not just about like, oh, we want to make this reform, we do not, but both sides felt offended from the other side.
I think that the challenge, and it's a huge challenge of this situation, it's create a very clear line in one hand. And it's like a clear line, it's very hard. Inside families now, like WhatsApp groups are kind of a battlefield. In the family, friends, it's very, very hard emotionally. Of course, the informational crisis, we brought it from here. So, like kind of Fox News, CNN kind of stuff, exactly the same thing. People have different facts, not just different opinions. It's all very, very hard. In the other hand, I will try to take an optimistic perspective on that. And you said like few groups, right? Like ultra-Orthodox settlers. And I think what's interesting now is it's kind of like drawing different lines and showing different groups inside it. So I can give an example. I grew up in Gush Etzion, which is considered part of the moderate side of the settlements in the West Bank. My family, my grandma was the first child in Gush Etzion, in this specific area of the West Bank, before 48. It was only 46, then it was Jordanian, then it was Israeli again. My grandpa went to jail in Jordan after 48 and came back, and after 67, they established it there, like a launch vote. My grandma, now she's in a hunger strike against the government, and she's a settler. You see, like it's something like here. I think we need, of course, naturally, to do like clear lines. In Israel, there is not clear lines, right? Like most of my friends went to the streets, even spontaneously, like every week, but also spontaneously 2 days ago. We saw that, like, with like the leaders of the protest. They grew up with me in the West Bank. And I think this is also an opportunity to draw like new alliances and new partnership with different groups that we, for too long, we kind of like said, they are X or they are Y. And I think in very hard times, and we are in hard times, it's also an opportunity to find new Partners, I don't know, partners or allies for a common goal. Yeah, I would love to hear more questions. We have like infinity
Questions,
topics
so
to
hard.
talk about.
I have a question. I think I gather that a lot of the people here, and not everybody can speak, but want to support protesters. Because I think that we're worried about the character of the country and the Jewish values, as the guy said in the first one. We're worried, sometimes it feels like they're not acting like Jews, the government, and even these so-called ultra Orthodox, they don't act like Jews. They don't seem like Jewish to me, the way they behave. And we're worried about the character, just like, how do we from here support these protesters?
And everyone heard the question also on Zoom? Or do you want me to repeat it?
Have you heard?
Okay, no, great. You said a couple of things. The one thing was how to support and be part of the protest, and the other thing, which I think I will address first, is about the different groups you mentioned. I think it's interesting because we have a weird situation where I feel like our politicians are kind of like not worthy of our people.
Say that again.
That our politicians now in Israel are kind of not worthy of our people. They are
Worthy of your people. Got it.
they're not good representatives. I lived my whole life in a beautiful town called Bet Shemesh, where half of the population there is ultra-Orthodox, half of them is modern Orthodox and secular and conservative. And I lived with neighbors and friends and people who are ultra-Orthodox. And what the government is doing is nothing like what I grew up with. This is not, and it's sad to me is that a lot of people now see the settlers representatives and the ultra-Orthodox representatives, and they learn things about the majority of these groups that are, I think, are not accurate. And it's really like upsetting. I do think that these people were not chosen out of the blue. We have these voices in these groups, and it's problematic and dangerous voices that the protests are fighting, because problems are real. But I hope that next elections will get better representatives also for the parties I would never vote for. So that's one thing. And about the protests, what do you want to say? Think about
How to help. First, I think to read, to stay informed, and it's also a sacrifice as someone who is addicted to the news. It's hard. It's like roller coaster. It's like wow. So to read, to care, I think it's a lot. There is fundraiser. We donate to the fundraiser for the protest. There is an organization that I'm part of their team, but this is more like for the long run. It's called the Israel Democratic Alliance. They're trying to strengthen the connection between Israel and America in like based upon liberal values. So if you want, I can send it to Rabbi Baich, and like you can
Please.
support. In multiple places, actually now, because the situation is so hard, there's a lot of organizations that are trying to make things better. Like I think about the fourth quarter, because now we're in the fourth quarter of Israel, right? We have like from 75 till 100. We have the initiative of the century. I'm not sure it's Matamea, something like that.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
I can, if you know any Israeli and you have a connection with them, tell them how you feel, and I'm sure
Yeah.
wow, that was fast. So I feel like Israelis, a lot of them now feel alone, and they feel like trying to be optimistic and trying to be hopeful, but sometimes they're falling into hopelessness. It's hard to maintain in a not a fight, because we never fight our brothers, but in a hard work into a democracy alive. And I feel like any good words you can say to them can help. And if you don't have any, you can, if you read in the news and there is comments, you can write comment. I sometimes have a bad habit of reading comments, and that usually makes me miserable. But not a person who writes a lot of comments, and I feel like a lot of people who are like me, or moderate, who wants the better good, don't write comments a lot, but the people who are actually here to fight and here to push back loves the concept of comments. And people look at the comments and feel like, whoa, like the majority of the people wants to have a civil war, so I guess that's what's gonna happen, or God forbid. But I feel like now what I've noticed that I'm trying to comment more positive messages and supportive messages to clear the air.
Robert,
Oh, well, thank you.
I'll go after.
Yeah, okay. The politicians, you're saying, are not worthy of the people they represent because they aren't doing a good job of representing them. How are they elected? Is it money? Is it a lot of money that they're being given from whom that gets them elected?
No, I think they got elected because they managed to flip the dynamics, and instead of promise people that will make their situation better, they played on the card of a lot of anger,
Fear and
and
anger.
fear and anger, and rightly so. Like the group who voted and still voting for Netanyahu, and I think it's important to say that specifically here, has a lot of right reasons to be on other people in the other side. In the history, there were a lot of discrimination against them, heavy discrimination against, again, I don't think they're Sephardic Jews necessarily, but this is the way the politicians play, right? They're playing like there is the Sephardic Jews voting for the Likud, and people who are angry against the discrimination that happened for years, voting for the Likud, and they manage the situation to vote for the people who fight for your, I don't know, your side against the bad guys on the other side. And yeah, there is a lot of similarity. A lot of similarity. And again, for me, it's so important to say that their anger, or part of their anger, is right. And I want to say that. Unfortunately, the outcomes of it is very bad, in my opinion. And unfortunately, now the situation is that the citizens are working for the politicians and not vice versa, the way it's supposed to happen, right? And I think this is what Hannah tried to say before. And I'll even say something even more complicated, because I think it's important to put it here. I woke up today, and we're living now in historical days. For myself, a more optimistic day, and I think Hannah can agree with me, that we have slightly more time to breathe for a second. Maybe there is a negotiation, not maybe, there is a negotiation. Hopefully, I'm not very optimistic, but hopefully it will create some kind of agreement. I have like really beloved people in my family that woke up for this morning frustrating because they are feeling that their vote worth nothing, because they voted and because there was a massive strike now, and there is an elite, right, elitistic group that blocked that, their vote worth nothing. I don't agree with that. Don't understand me wrong. I don't agree with that. But when I see my uncle that used to live in Gush Katif in the Gaza Strip, and the country literally destroyed his house and never brought him money, and now he's like need to pay again for a house after 20 years, and you know what I mean? There is a lot of anger there, and right anger. And the biggest challenge here is how we find now some healing process, right? Even though that, again, I believe that 100% in the protests, like I believe it was the right thing to do. But we also need now, after we managed to somehow delay it, to heal this wound.
And I feel like another step of it is that I felt like if the judicial reforms, the way it was represented by Yuri Levin, the Ministry of Law, would go and prove, it would be a disaster. But now I also feel that if no reform at all would happen, if the process would block any change in the Supreme Court, even though I didn't want one, it didn't matter to me that much, it would also be a disaster because we have to meet in the middle. If half of the people think that's a necessarily change, then doesn't mean the whole reform should be approved, but we have to be able to talk and listen to their pain.
Is there any sense on the left at all that the courts overstepped their bounds?
Yeah.
There is a.
I can give myself as an example. I thought for years that we need judicial reform till I read the details of the offer of Yair Levin. I was like, no. And it was very funny because I was their kind of like ally, right?
You thought they needed to be reformed because of what issues in short?
Because I thought there was the power of the authorities wasn't established by agreements. It's established by kind of like take what you can get.
Yeah, we don't have a
Right.
constitution.
And in the long term, I
Ah.
thought it's very problematic because like the government tried to take as much as they can, the Supreme Court tried to get as much as they can, and everyone is like blaming each other.
It seems to me that the process was so much more as much at fault as the specific proposal. Because if I think about our country, the Constitution that we have is a document that takes a long time to change.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to change how our judiciary worked here, it would take a very long time. But the process that the current government wanted to institute, right,
Yeah.
very fast to push it through too
I
quickly.
think many people for years thought there should be a judicial reform, like some judicial reform. And if you would look at the
False.
polls like 4 months ago, and people were being asked, do you think there should be a change in the relationship between the authorities or a judicial reform? A lot of people would say yes. I would say even a small majority, for sure. And now this number was decreased significantly because exactly what you just described, the way people were imagining this change would happen is through a long process. We're listening to a lot of experts from the law departments and from financial departments, because every change doesn't just affect law, it affects finance, economy, it affects security, it affects the social life. So
I think the question that I was going to ask before too is, you used a term, Hannah, that which we use too. We have liberal democratic values. I mean, those are 3 words, but they have so much meaning behind them. And I don't know if in Israel everybody agrees on what even that definition is, or even if that's the prescription for the land of Israel, for the government of Israel.
I'm very busy with this. I think a lot about that. I'm trying to write about that. I'm really struggling with this topic because to some extent, I can say in one hand that the majority of Israelis bring of like majority of talks. And I totally think it's right. In the other hand, Israel is kind of a box of like a million different dreams. And the end games of a lot of different groups inside Israel are
Right.
like crucially. And the question now is to say, and it's very different than US to some extent. The US was always kind of like the box is more important than the end game, right? Like we are together again, not really
For a
true.
while.
For a while. Now it's very different. And actually, I think that the process or events that happen here affect Israel immediately. Like this there is a huge connection here. But I keep asking myself this question on how we're translating these different end games into one story or even one space. And I think we can, I think we should, and I think we have to do. And now the question is how. And a lot of people in Israel are struggling with it.
What's amazing is that, like, yesterday we had a big protest of the supporters of the judicial reform, because after it was postponed, many people came out to the streets, and actually that was the first in the 3 months protest in favor of this reform. And it's amazing to see that in this protest and in the protests that were before that were against this reform, they had Israeli flags. They screamed democracy, democracy, because what was democracy for them was like keeping the Supreme Court independent and strong, and what democracy for them is like, we're the majority, we won the election, we need to be able to make this change. And what's interesting is that they're both kind of right, and so I think a lot of people wants democracy and wants this importance, but they see differently what it means.
Let me see if there are any questions from folks online. I just want to make sure we're not disregarding anything there. Anyone there? Okay, I think Mark.
So this is a slightly different direction. You've talked about you're hopeful that there can be some reconciliation. One of the areas I'm really wondering if there can be is between the secular and the ultra-Orthodox. It seems to me there is such a diverse point of view about rights and responsibilities, money, supporting them, service in the military, all those kinds of things. How in the world could that be reconciled? And how's the secular Israel going to survive in the future with what's happening there?
This is the most painful, maybe most of the second painful topic here. And it's a good question. And to some extent, it's very interesting, because part of the frustration of Israel, it's not think it's right wing, the supporters of the reform or the coalition now, is that people used their positions in the market, right, in important rule like positions in the army, to change to kind of like push back against the coalition. It was very scary. It still is very scary. Pilots, reserve soldiers. The airport was shut down for a day. This is unbelievable. In the other hand, part of what the ultra-Orthodox trying to do is to keep this situation in the same, like in the way it is. They don't want to, assimilate in. They don't want to get more involved in the army or even in the market. When I say market in broader sense, right? Like in the
economy.
In the economy. Yeah, in the economy. Okay. And I think this is really the question, the big, really big question. I think there is a lot of, and Hannah know about it way more than me. So maybe you will say, yeah.
Sure. I think, first of all, I agree with everything you said. I think we have kind of like a weird situation when we have two different kinds of powers. We have a political power, which means the bigger your group of voters is, the more powerful you are. That's like very basic democracy lesson, which I feel like now is the ultra-Orthodox are starting to feel. Like 20 years ago, I think they almost doubled their size, and they're like a percentage in the population, and they're feeling okay. If that's the tempo, so like we can start acting like the majority now, even though we're still a minority, because we look like 100 years from now we will for sure be the majority, which is one way to look at things. I honestly don't think that will happen, because it's hard to be a prophet and know what will be in the future, and I feel like they're a little bit like thinking away ahead of themselves, and it might be a mistake, because a minority, once it becomes a majority, gets a responsibility of the majority, and then whether you like it or not, you will be a doctor, you will be a professor, and then whether you like it or not, different values will be part of your system, even if you're keeping an ultra-Orthodox halacha, which is okay. But status aside, we have that kind of powerful group, and we have another powerful group, which is the secular Jews, who are, I would say secular, but it's not of all of them are completely secular, but like
In the spectrum.
in the spectrum, and they are feeling like we don't have the biggest amount of voters, but we are paying the biggest amount of taxes, and so like if we are striking, we can shut the country down, and we saw that yesterday. Like, so it's kind of like these two groups never really opened up and shared these things out loud. Like it was like a under conscience thingy that every group felt like, oh, we're going to be the majority, and this group felt like we're not the majority. It threatens us that like this group gets bigger, but we're still in power because we have the important institutions in the country. But I feel like now that we've opened up and everything is out there, we know it. Maybe it's time to understand, because I don't think the ultra-Orthodox wants to live in an ultra-Orthodox country with ultra-Orthodox rules. First of all, because they have different groups in, we have Hasidic, different sides of Hasidics fight with each other all the time. And we have the Mitnagdim, and we have the Shasniks, who are like Mizrahi Haredim, which is completely different group. And none of them wants anyone else to like, that there will be like one group that will be in charge of the rest of them, because they have different rules and different traditions. Among them, we just look at them like as ultra-Orthodox, but they don't see themselves as that way. And from the other side, I don't think any of the secular Jews want to live in not a democracy, not a democratic country, including a small group controls everything just because it's richer or more important in their job. So now it's all out there, and we have to understand how each group doesn't take the one out down. Yeah.
Other questions, please.
I think just the main issue for us is that the airport stays open.
We have maybe 10 more minutes, you think? I mean, are we okay for like 10 minutes? Then I want to do a little bit of introductions and a little bit of travel related things. Would that be all right? Okay, good.
Natzbag is beautiful airport.
Best airport.
I love it. And I say why? Can I explain why? Okay, there is a weird situation in American airports, which like after 8 or something, like a lot of like coffee places and in the airports are shutting down. I was like, why? Not really why? Like we're closing all the time, right? And because Natzbag is the only airport in Israel, there is more, but like the only classic, the only big really airport in Israel, coffee 24/7. Everything.
Duty-free shop.
Duty-free. And there's always people there. And I was like, I love
And
it.
I was saw like, okay, first we saw O'Hare, and I was like, okay, that's nothing like Natzbag, but okay. And then we saw Madison, like for sure it's nothing like that. But then we came to JFK. I was like, okay, this is gonna be like Natzbag. Everything is gonna be open 24/7. It will be so fun. No. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have a lot to learn from us too. More thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can ask a question that my friends had asked me. Is it going to be safe to go?
Can you ask the question
I
again?
said,
Wow.
given the riots and what's going on, and my friends watch the news and they don't know very much about Israel, and they say, is it going to be safe to go?
So I think in general, I feel like Americans, when they look at Israel, they see that as way more dangerous than it is. I feel less secure here. I will be very honest with you. Again, arm control, all the guns control and stuff. Like, I don't know, I feel more secure in Israel to some extent. Maybe there will be a mess, but also pretty cool mess. Like these specific riots and protests are, for me, one of the most inspiring moments in Israel history. And I have a crazy FOMO right now, like fear of missing out. Like I'm kind of like I'm really glad to be here with you, but like, I don't know, there is something going on. Like
It's like history is happening in Manhattan.
in Jerusalem.
But you're not, and will you be in Israel already by the time we get there, or no? You probably come later.
We'll arrive to Israel in June 28th.
Oh, you'll miss us by 4 days.
Oh.
5 days.
Yeah, but also I think it's also a compliment to Israel as a country that they will be and we managed to keep it, and it's a very hard situation to keep, very hard. Still without violence, and we're talking about like 3 months of consistent protests.
Yeah, and the percentage of the protest is like more than 4% of the population, which in US will be like
I think-
millions. Like if you like,
I think someone calculated, so don't catch me on the numbers, but someone calculated that if it was like, if it would happen here, it would be 70 million people on the streets actively.
Wow.
and yeah, and like
Percentage-wise.
no,
Yeah, percentage.
no store was robbed, and
Oh,
no one
that's
was
great.
Right, and that's the
Yeah.
difference between what might have happened here in Madison, you know, a year and a half ago downtown, when there was a lot of damage, as opposed to what happens in Israel. I mean, we saw bonfires, but the bonfires were in the middle of the highway. They were not near a building. I mean,
yeah.
people didn't take this out on buildings per se. There
Yeah.
was demonstrations. And that's why maybe the word riot is a difficult word to use and may not be the right word to use. And we may have to say to our friends who say the word riot, was it not exactly rioting. These were democratic, nonviolent, essentially,
Yeah.
protests. Was there some violence?
Always.
Yes,
No,
yeah.
it's a real big.
but these were essentially nonviolent protests.
Also, I want to add one more thing, and I think, okay, I'll share with you that in the last year and a half here, I felt that to some extent, I don't know if it's American Jewry or here, but flags in general became like a political thing. Like Israeli flag people, I've met a lot of people here who are afraid to walk with Israeli flag, who don't think they're racist or something. Even American flag here considered to be as something, I don't know.
It can.
Yeah, but even like people are kind of like agree with them. But I don't know if agree, not actively, but something like, okay, like they took our flag and whatever. I think something really inspiring in those protests, that I think a lot of Israelis wasn't ashamed to take their flag and bring new meaning, their meaning to the flag.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we all can learn from. And actually, I'll say a more complicated thing. Yesterday, when there was both riots, there was a really sweet pictures of someone from not riot, protest. Someone from the protest against the reform brought their Israel flag to the protest for the reform. So like, okay, take you.
There was a protest against the reform, and then Bibi Netanyahu, prime minister, postponed the judicial reform, and then a lot of the protesters were like, okay, let's go home. But then new protesters came to say like, no, we wanted this reform. So like we had all pictures of like people giving them their flag. Oh, you can use it. So
Yeah, and I think the idea of like, we're not giving up on our flags or our symbols. We can reclaim it. We can bring new meaning to it. I think it's an important lesson for us all.
yeah. I think I have time for one last question.
Yeah.
I agree with you that this is not only about judicial reform, it's about the character of the country. It also impinges upon the relationship between Jews and Palestinians and how they're going to be treated, and what the relationship between the settler movement and the people on the West Bank is. So it has enormous consequences. And I think that's why we're also concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Let me, first of all, give great gratitude to Oz and Hannah who came here tonight. You can stay, you can go. What I will want to do is now is do a little bit of trip orientation. But Vivakashad and have something to eat too, but.
Definitely take the bomba. I just want to say that for me, it's inspiring to see that we have family outside of Israel that care so much about what's going on there. And I'm gonna go home and tell my family and friends about this conversation, because I feel like they will feel like even like more power and more like love because of that. And I think that so I don't know what will be the next step in history now. I don't know if there will be a big agreement that will be like kind of like a constitution. That's like my dreams, that everyone will be like, I don't like all of it, and I'm willing to live with it, and that will be a good step, or maybe something will be bad again, and another protest, another complicated situation. But I also don't know if I will be here to tell you that, or I will also already be in Israel in the time it happens. But just want you to know that we don't have a privilege not to be optimistic. And when I say optimistic, it doesn't mean I don't care, I do nothing, but like caring, doing everything we can and in our power to change the situation. But being with despair and with feeling like it's all lost is not a way of working. And we don't have that privilege because we don't have a lot of states. And we just have one, and we don't have a lot of people, we just have one. And whether we live here or in Israel, it affects our life, what's going on there. So I feel like we always should be optimistic and always try to do our best to make it better, but never give up.
Thank you. Thank you. On Sunday, we continue. So Sunday, we'll be back here at 2 p.m. Central Time. And so we're so glad to have that. So again, what I want to do is just a few moments of really, for those who aren't traveling with us, there are a few in the room. You can certainly feel.
But we can because his brother's big birthday is during.
Nice. Well, you can certainly stay for this. You don't have to leave. No one has to leave. But what I want to do is to take now Patricia's wonderful suggestion and have people introduce one another to themselves. And I'm going to start on, I'm going to aim the camera in this direction, and we'll just go around the room, and you can just introduce yourselves to see who's here. So just give us your name and tell us if you've been to Israel or not in the past, and if you have, how many times you've been there, if you can count.
I'm Judy Herstand, and I lived in Israel in 1975 and again in 1977, and was back there the last time in 2000. And my heart is always with Israel.
Mark Herstand, I've been there twice, both for about 3 weeks. Once in, I think it was 77 for about 3 weeks. And then again, we went as a family in 2000.
And I'm Barb Woodruff, and was in Israel in 1981 when a rabbi led us first to Egypt, then across the Sinai and into Israel. It was really wonderful.
I'm Patricia Litcher, and I have been to Israel twice, both the temple trips, the first and the third, not the second. And I enjoyed both trips. And I just have to say that I knit and I like cats. It had to be said. It just had to be said.
Hannah, you know, we'll move around the circle.
I'm Phyllis Wanger.
And I'm Kate Schenger, and I have never been to Israel, and I'm really excited to go. It's about time.
Can people please speak up?
I'm Lillian Abrams, and I'm looking forward. This will be my first trip. I'm looking forward to it.
And I'm Steve Abrams, and it's my first trip also.
And I'm Jerry Sternberg, and I worked on a kibbutz in 1971, and I've been there 3 times.
I'm Merle Sternberg, and I've been to Israel 5 times, but I haven't been, the last time I went was 1984. But they were all condensed into like my real young years. And one time I spent 6 months there.
Wow.
All right, now we're going to go on the screen. We're going to go just as we have them on the screen so we can see folks. Marilyn, why don't you begin? You have to be unmute yourself.
Okay, how about that?
Got it.
Marilyn Humiston. This is my first trip, and I'll be traveling with my daughter from Kansas. I'm from St. Louis, but my brother is Steve Kozloff, and Mary Fulton is my sister-in-law.
Okay, let's go. Lynn and Scott.
Hi, I'm Lynn Berger. I've been to Israel once before in 1973, shortly after the Yom Kippur War.
Hi, and Scott Bauman. I've never been there.
Okay, let's see. Jake and Sarah.
There we go.
There you go.
Jake Cinderbrand.
I'm Sarah.
Sarah.
We've been to Israel once. It was about 5 years ago.
With your parents. And we're going with our parents, Mary and Sumi and Carl Cinderbrand.
Awesome. Sue and Chuck.
This will be our second trip with you, Rabbi. And we went in 2007 and we loved it so much while we were there. We said we want to go back with a group. And we've been foiled a couple of times. So we're hoping that this time works out for us, but it's definitely looking challenging at times.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that. I know how it feels. I get that. Andrew and Patty, if she's still available.
Hi, I'm Andrew Putney, and my wife Patty had to leave. She had a rehearsal to get to. I've never been to Israel. Patty has been a few times. Israel and the philosophy of Zionism is something that there have been some very lively debates about in this house. And Patty kept saying, you have to go see it. You have to go see it. Well, we're going to go see it. I think it's a fascinating time to be going. We have, relatives in Israel who are talking about leaving even before this most recent event. They have children who are getting to the point where they're going to have to serve in the IDF if they, stay there. And, they're really looking at this and trying to say, where does this all balance out? And I think that there are huge questions. It'll be interesting to see how this all works out. But I think I'm very much looking forward to getting there, looking at all of the history, all of the different cultures that have been through that land, and to get a feeling for it, get a feeling for what works, what doesn't. Can you really have a democracy without a constitution and a Bill of Rights? I'm not sure. There are a lot of interesting questions here, and I'm fascinated to see what the results are.
Great, thank you. And before Alan and Laura, you introduce yourselves, let me just say, in English, we would say, save the best for last. But in Hebrew, it's much more beautiful kind of phrasing, which is acharon acharon chaviv, which means the last is the dearest. And so we turn to the Schwartzsteins. Introduce yourselves.
Go ahead.
I'm Laurie Schwartzstein. And we have been to Israel once before with the group and looking forward to, it was 8 years ago, looking forward to going again.
And we went with both Patty and Pat, and we're glad the centers hopefully will be able to join us this time.
We hope so too. Last time Israel invaded Gaza.
Andrew Nami, who is going to be joining us, of course, sends his regards. He's right now doing a Benot Mitzvah rehearsal. That's what we do on Tuesdays from between 5:30 and 8 o'clock. So he's sorry he can't be here right now, but he'll be with us at our other occasions. And just to conclude, a few thoughts. First of all, I put into the chat, for those of you who are online, if you go to the chat, you can click on the link there and you can find the document that we've sent the link to before, and we'll send it again. But with the Ayelet Travel Company puts out a booklet called of travel tips. And we'll have a copy for folks here, a hard copy. And there are, again, you can go online and find this document right there. That's for people who really have a lot of questions, especially those who haven't traveled to Israel, about currency, about voltage and about electronic equipment, about banking and how best to deal with money, temperatures, clothing to wear. There's a checklist at the back of this document that tells you what you might want to consider bringing. I hope that by implication it says these are things you shouldn't bring because you don't need it. Certainly traveling in the summer can be, well, not quite the summer, it's just the beginning of summer, so it's not quite oppressively hot yet. In August, 2 months later, it would be very hot. But when we're going, as we say in Hebrew, it's beseder, it's okay, right? It's going to be good. The other thing that I would want to share with the group is something that I always share with travel groups, and that is at least 5 major things to remember when traveling. And some of you have heard these before. So I say the 5 major things to remember, and you can't see that easily online, but they're just 5 words: patience, flexibility, humor, hats, and hydration, right? Again, patience, flexibility, humor, hats, and hydration. It's very important values that we want to promote, because first of all, things don't always go, where in Israel, it could be any country. But when you're traveling with a group, things happen and we just have to have patience. We also need to have flexibility, gmishut, right? So we have flexibility in saying, today may not be exactly as we planned, but we're going to try and accomplish most of what we have because of various reasons. We're going to do a lot of things, but life happens, right? And other things happen as well. Third, have a sense of humor about things, because things could be a lot worse. We're traveling in Israel. There'll be 35 people on this bus. That's the 32 really. 30 people who are traveling with our group. And we have a driver and a guide. So we have 32 people who have to live together for 10 days. And that is a new and brand new kind of experience. And so, you know, things happen and we want to make sure, A, that we have a sense of humor, but also that we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. We will get very close in those 10 days. And that's okay. And stuff happens and we just have to let it sort of roll off our backs, because we're 32 people in a space that is, you know, less than half the size of this room that we're in for a lot of the time when we're on the road, and when we're together walking or together touring and doing all the things we're going to do. Hats and hydration are absolutely essential. Hats and hydration, absolutely. We want no one to not be hydrated. We get water with our trip. Bring along your own your own water bottle also. In the country of Israel, where we stop, where we have hotels, you can use the tap water without fear. No problem. Use the tap water, fill up your own water bottle. There will be water available on the bus for us as part of included in our tour, but bring your own as well. Make sure you identify it somehow. But really drink a lot, and we will be reminding you to drink. I mean, it's one thing to drink when you're on a tour, when you're on an air-conditioned bus and it's very dry. In Israel, the air will be more humid, but it will be warmer. We will sweat, we will perspire more than we know, and we will be telling you to drink, drink, drink. If you haven't had a drink lately, take a drink. We take bathroom breaks, you know, when we travel. So we also, when we get on the bus in the morning, be sure you hit the bathroom before you get on the bus, so that we can start out fresh and with, you know, clean systems that we have. So now there may be other people in this group who have other rules that they think about when they travel. And if anyone would like to offer another rule that we can add to our list, I only had 5, but maybe there's another one that we can add. People have experienced or not experienced, that's why it should be a rule. Or does anyone want to add to this list?
Sunscreen?
Sunscreen, ooh, good.
The bus should have a bathroom?
The bus, I don't think the buses have bathrooms here in Israel.
Oh.
The tour buses do not have bathrooms, as far as I know. So that's why we ask people to use the bathroom right before we get on the bus in the morning, and we make bathroom stops along the way. Bathroom stops at, you know, at every little rest stop, at every little you know, gas station. There are bathrooms along the way.
So it's really small, so like not that far.
Yeah.
Buddy system?
Yeah. Buddy system. Tell us what you mean. Great idea.
We should all be accountable for more than
Buddy
ourselves,
system.
so that if somebody's missing, we're aware of them.
Right. So you will find me and the cantor and our guide doing a lot of counting, because we don't want to leave people behind. I mean, it's easier. Back in January, I took 5 kids with me to Washington. And even then I kept counting all the time. I wanted to see where were my 5 kids. We have, you know, 30 travelers, and we have the bus driver and the guide who I believe will take care of themselves. But it's important to have, thank you, I appreciate that. We'll have to create some kind of a system so we know if anyone's missing, who that would be. and what we do. Thank you. Yeah,
Be on time.
on time. Thank you. Oh, excellent. You know, we do, as I said, you know, I used the example before about being on the bus at 8 o'clock in the morning. If our guide asks us to be on the bus at 8 o'clock in the morning, he means be on the bus, ready to go at 8 in the morning. Please don't come down to breakfast at 7:50 expecting to eat a full plate of food and then get on the bus. We really do need to be on time. The guide will stress that. We will try to stress it nicely, but please, everyone help one another and be cooperative to make sure we get on the bus and be on time, because that helps the whole day. The cantor and I and the guide will have what to tell you. We have what to orient you, what to offer to you. We want to make sure we get that all in. Other suggestions, please.
Expect the unexpected.
Ooh, love that.
Wishing you a wonderful trip. And thanks again. Ozzy.
Thank you. We never know what we're going to come across if we, for example, see an animal on the side of the road that our guide notices or the bus driver notices, and we all want to take a photograph of an ibex or I don't know what we would want to see. Say it again.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, to expect the unexpected.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Thank you. We'll see you on Sunday. Toda. Anything else that folks would think about? Doug, I think
What
that's it.
about access to laundry?
So access to laundry is going to be a question. There are laundries along the way, but there'll be more in the cities than there would be in the country. So for example, I think that the tour guide will say, try to avoid using laundries. Try to bring clothes that you can either wear again or to bring very light clothing and a lot of it. Because we don't have a lot of time to stop for laundries. And we want to make sure that you don't leave anything behind. Some people wash out their clothing, wash out their underwear after a day.
That will dry quickly.
Levels of experience travelers have, but some people do things like that. But bring a lot of light clothing and enable yourself not to worry about it.
Wear shorts the whole time,
So
so we need long pants.
okay, great question. So the question is, can we wear shorts the whole time, or can we we need to bring long pants? Yes and yes. When we travel as a group, in general, shorts are, at this time of year, that's the way to go. For those people who would feel comfortable about wearing shorts, you should just certainly wear shorts. There will be places, certain sites, where we will expect to have certain bodily extremities covered. If we go, for example, to the Kotel, if we go to the Western Wall, we will go to the Western Wall. They want us to dress a little more modestly. Men can get away with shorts. Women, they would probably, if you approach the Kotel on the women's side, they would like people to have like a wraparound skirt. So my recommendation to the women is bring a wraparound skirt. Now, that parenthetically, I'm also saying bring a day pack. Have a day pack within which you can carry your modest like clothing, your water bottle, other things that you need when you travel. People need different things when they travel, medications, those kinds of things. Have a day pack within which you can carry everything.
Rabbi, when you say like a long skirt or something, do women need to have sleeves to their elbows, or does it have to be to our wrist?
I think in some of these places, elbows would be okay. I mean, if you bring like a light light sweater that you can then put into your day pack, that would be helpful too. But I would say sometimes the authorities in these places are inconsistent, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So bring like a light sweater that does cover up to your wrists. And then when we leave those places, then you can just take it off. I think that's my advice to us. Patricia or Barbara, you had a question.
Hotels have laundry.
The hotels have laundry. So the hotels themselves may or may not have laundry. I don't know exactly. We can find out the answer to that question. They certainly have services, and you can order laundry to be taken out. But I don't know how the timing is of that. that I would not depend upon the timing for those kinds of things.
I think when we were traveling once and tried to do laundry, we have to bring our own little box of detergent because they don't always have those available. And I have one other thing. You had mentioned early on that we would be receiving a paperback book on Israel that would discuss some of the areas that we'll be visiting.
So the book that we have, I'm hoping to give to everybody. It may not discuss every place that we're visiting. It's called The Spiritual Traveler's Guide to Israel. And it has a very different kind of approach to traveling. So you'll be getting those eventually. In terms of knowing everything about the places that we're visiting, you know, we are meeting this coming Friday with our travel agent to refine our itinerary now that we have a secure is the wrong word, now that we have a defined travel group. And so, you know, we'll know more about what those places are. And remember to ask Rabbi Google or Rabbi Google has a lot of information about some of the places. So when we get our new and finished and more refined itinerary, we can look things up online and find out about places that we aren't yet going to, but we'll get there.
Question. What about masks, vaccinations, cards, any of that we need with us, or should we be prepared for?
I would, this is my recommendation. First of all, everybody should be up to date on your boosters. That's my recommendation. Make sure you are. Please bring your booster card with you. You can place it with your passport. A couple of things. Masks I would bring if people are uncomfortable in strange groups, you know, and in crowds. I think that has to really, they're not required to travel on most airlines. We'll get the official, you know, whatever airline you're flying on, we can get the official word from that airline. I don't believe that any airline requires it these days. I could be wrong. But I think that's something that every person is going to have to feel comfortable about. So I would bring some masks. If that's part of your normal kind of everyday comportment, I tell you, I wear a mask if I'm in the supermarket. And if I fly, I'm going to wear a mask for the 12 hours I'm on that long haul flight, because that's just what I do. But that doesn't mean that people need to do that. That's just my personal practice. Everybody has their own level of tolerance when it comes to that. I do want to say something about that came to mind about the vaccination cards and passports. Obviously, we know our passports need to be valid 6 months after the date of our returning to this country. But the other thing that I would do, if you go to your passport tonight or in the next week, go to your passport and place in your passport 3 clips. One paper clip is going to hold your vaccination card. A second paper clip is going to hold your visa. When we arrive in Israel, for those of you who haven't done it recently, we do not get our passports stamped. There is no such thing anymore as a physical stamp in our passport. What you do on the way to passport control, you stop at a kiosk, your passport will be scanned, and you will get a ticket. It's probably 3 inches by 1.5 inches. It has a photograph from your passport, where your passport information is encoded on this ticket. And I'm going to recommend that you get a paper clip in your passport and you put that ticket in your passport so you don't lose it. You don't need it to get out of the country, but hotels sometimes ask for it. Your hotel may ask for it. So, and there are many places that could ask for it, but keep it with your passport. And the best way to do that is to have a paper clip. It's a simple tool, but it works. And the third paper clip, maybe for something else we get, I don't know. I like the number 3 because it's an unusual number.
Can we do it digital? Can it be on our phones with us?
I don't believe so. I do not know. Are you talking about, Marilyn, what document are you talking about?
Well, copy of your passport, the vaccination card, any insurance cards that we might need to have with us, our health insurance card, surely we need to bring those. Anything in that order?
I think digital copies of whatever you have, those kinds of documentation would be very helpful to have. Could be,
Credit cards.
would be very
Yeah.
helpful to have.
Okay.
You may not need it at all, and you may be have a copy of your passport would be great, because sometimes you may be asked for your passport number, and like rather than fumphing around in your day pack for your passport, you can whip out your phone, and you can have it right there.
Okay.
That's the way you travel. By the way, always keep your passport with you. Do not leave it in the safes in the hotel. Always keep your passport with you. No one will take your passport from you. At the hotel, when we check in, we may take them as a group and have them photocopied. That's how the hotel knows who's there, but we'll give them back to you. But other than that, always keep your passport with you. It's the most important thing you travel with outside of your partner and best friend that you're traveling. The most important thing that you have with you. Tickets are electronic. You have your tickets. That's not a problem. But your passport, very difficult to replace. So please.
Speaking of tickets, I tried to find from the travel agent information on our itinerary for our flight, and they said they didn't have it yet. Have you heard anything?
We won't have it for another week or so.
Okay.
We won't have it for another week or so. For those who are traveling on LOT Polish Airlines, who are with the group, we'll have that in a week or so. We'll have individual ticket numbers. We have the flight number, the itinerary number, that 6-digit code, and we'll have all the documentation to you. But we haven't really, fully booked everything. Frankly, our registration is still open. And if anybody wants to travel, encourage your friends and neighbors to come with us. It would be great if we had more people. So we're open to more people.
How many people?
I was talking to my girlfriend who is a travel agent, and I don't know, maybe all of you are aware, but they have what they call air tags. Some of them are related to Apple. I'm sure there's a companion piece to the Android, but they are literally a GPS that you put into your luggage, your purse, anything you would carry. If it gets lost, you can track it and find out where your luggage might be if it would happen to go astray. So it's called an air tag. I bought 4 for almost minimal on Amazon. It was cheap, and sharing that, but just information that I surely didn't have until my girlfriend shared with me. She said, take that with you.
Thank you, Meryl. Yeah. Someone asked, what's the capacity of our bus? So the capacity of our bus is 42. So we could get, it would be nice and tight with 42. Having 30 is like, we can spread out a little bit here and there. The other thing, speaking of our bus, please, I know that there are some people who need or really want to sit up front. They see everything. Please be sure to, again, bear in mind, try to rotate seats all around, give everybody a chance to sit in every part of the bus. We'll make general, I don't want to call out anybody in particular, but so please be sure to, let people have their time in different parts of the bus. Steve, you had a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I had a question, but
We have some other, we have other time to talk, more about these travel things, but we're running a little bit over, but that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
well, we can ask that personally, but the bus from here to O'Hare, is that arranged, and what is that gonna be?
So here, the bus transportation from here to O'Hare for those who are traveling on those flights. So I'm going to propose that we travel together on what's it called, Van Gelder.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's $65 round trip. It's cheap, and we can either get on at the university station or you can get on at the park and ride. The park and ride is nice. You can leave your car there if you feel comfortable with that. Or you get on at the university.
We need group reservations then.
I'm going to contact them and find out how that goes. Thank you.
And if it stops in Rockford, I can get there.
I believe it does. Certain buses do.
Yeah.
Certain buses don't.
I'll watch.
Our departure, for those on the Polish airline flight,
Yep.
our departure is 5:15.
Yeah.
We will know what time we need to check in by, which I'm gonna guess is 2.5 to 3 hours before flight time.
Yeah.
PM, correct. Yes, thank you for stating that. 5:15 PM is our departure. And so, and it's a 3-hour, we have to count on a 3-hour ride from here to O'Hare. So we'll work that out.
Is there a layover? Yeah,
Yes. So we will fly, for those who are flying, you're talking about from our group flight.
yeah.
The group flight departs from O'Hare. It flies about 11 hours or 10 hours, 10 and a half hours. It flies to Warsaw, Poland. We're in Warsaw for about an hour and a half. And then we travel to Tel Aviv. That flight is about 4 or 5 hours, by the way, from
It's the same
Warsaw.
plane? Is it the same plane?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. My sense would be it's not, but I don't know that for a fact. We will have to change planes, or we have to count on changing planes.
But we're assigned seats on our planes, right? We don't have to be standing in line and jostling.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. We'll be assigned those seats.
I won't be able to be here Sunday at 2, but I could see a recording maybe of the Zoom meeting.
Yes, yes. Today's recording got started late. I apologize for that, but you'll have a recording.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes,
So we're gonna get a Zoom link?
yes, you will.
Will there be speakers for the other Zooms?
Yes, the same speakers, because they're speaking, Hannah and Oz are speaking on different topics for
It
our.
would be really helpful if they could have a microphone. We didn't catch a lot of it.
We'll see what we can do. It's a difficult situation. We might be able to use an owl, but my computer doesn't like the owl, or the owl doesn't like my computer. But I really appreciate what you say, Sue. And so we'll try and get the owl connected, which has a much better microphone and sound system.
What about if we could get the transliteration as it walks through across the screen?
We can do that. It's not always as reliable, but we can have closed captioning.
It's hard to understand them all the time at a distance.
That's a different question, but yes. Their accents are very strong, but their English is good, but they do speak quickly. And sometimes maybe we lose a word here or there.
Yeah, they're young. We have older ears.
Other comments, please. All right. Well, yes.
Somebody said here that some of the people got a list of the participants of the tour. We never got them.
No, we're going to send out a roster in the next day or two.
Great.
We'll send you a roster with names and email addresses.
Yay, great.
So we can be in touch with one another, how we can, as much as we need. Okay.
Thanks so much.
You know, every time we avoid Chicago and O'Hare, but I know probably a number of people don't have global entry, or maybe they don't have access to fast lines. So I think we have to be prepared for some delays at O'Hare.
Mhm.
But if some of us do have it, we can go. No, but just to be at the airport early enough, because. Oh, yeah. You know, just.
Well, I would say this, checking in for the flight may not be as tumultuous as returning to the United States,
No, but
which
just
is what you're
getting
talking
through
about.
security, just getting the security
Right.
line to get to the flight.
Right. That's why we have to be at the airport 3 hours before flight time. For an international departure, they recommend 2.5 to 3 hours before.
Yeah.
And I think one of the, people who travel on the bus together will all sort of check in together. We'll travel together as a little caravan to the airlines, and we'll see if we can make sure we have a group check-in. Because that's something that we can get. We can get a group check-in. We'll have to check in individually. TSA is TSA. If you have pre-checked, bevakasha, please you should use pre-check because they'll want you to.
Right.
I'm not, but if we all check in together, we'll all go through together at some level. But of course, obviously, as we know in this country, when we leave on a plane, everybody's searched or questioned individually. That happens however it happens. When we return to this country, we will go through passport control and customs. And for those who have, what's it called?
Global
entry. People should use global entry. A number of people do here. They should use that because that just expedites people through the airport.
Do you know how you get it? I guess I should find out how you get it.
It's 4 to 6 months out.
It's
You can't get it for 4 to 6 months. They're way out. Passports are almost a year.
Right, we don't. for those who have it should use it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it.
Okay.
But just know that we're waiting in a slightly longer line. You know, people who travel a lot internationally get it because it speeds things along.
Sure.
There's another service, Clear, is that what it's called?
Yes. Well,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure if Clear is for boarding a plane or getting off the plane. But there are many different, I don't want to go into the details because I frankly don't know them. But you ask someone who knows, or you can look into it. I do know that global entry requires a long clearance time because the State Department or Secret Service or
Yeah. it costs about $5.
Homeland Security clears you in advance. Takes a while.
I just came through O'Hare Airport and the Clear, it looked to me like the Clear was where you hold your face up to the screen and it can identify you just by looking at your face. That particular service, it looked like was to leave the country, you know, to get onto the plane
I see.
versus arrival.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't know.
not sure if it works both ways.
We'll try and find out some answers to these questions, understanding that flexibility is very important. And if we get to the airport 3 hours before flight time, we'll be fine. It may take us a little while, but we'll be fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's
All
nice
right,
to meet
friends.
everybody.
Have a good evening, everyone. We'll see you on Sunday for those who can make it. Take care. Good night.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are in the room,
Yeah.
I have this handout for you. Again, this is,
We,
I sent you a link, but you can have this hard copy as well.
will you be mailing those out to us or emailing them or what?
If you'd like me to mail you one, I can mail you one.
That would be lovely.
You can access it online with the link that's in the chat. If you go to the chat and you click on the link.
Right, right, but after we sign off, we don't have the chat anymore, so.
No, but what you can do, if you open up the link, make it a favorite or save it somehow.
Okay, I can try.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's not a problem. We'll get it to you.
Thank you.
I think you did.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, everyone. Please take some more food. For those of you who aren't here, you missed the food, but
Yeah.
maybe you can get it next time or something.
Can we donate some money to the?
Good night, friends. Good night, friends.
He's signing off now. Okay, here it is.
Is there a kitty that we can put some money in to repay for the?
No,